Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Donald Gill's truck rumbled to a stop in the driveway of his suburban home. The 45-year-old civil engineer remained seated for a moment, his calloused hands still gripping the steering wheel. An unexpected equipment malfunction at the project site had already thrown his week into disarray, but it was a gnawing feeling in his gut that truly unsettled him. He shut off the engine, the sudden silence broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. Then he heard it, a muffled giggle drifting from an open upstairs window. The sound hit him like a punch to the stomach. He knew that laugh. It was Lucille's, his wife of 20 years, but it carried a carefree lightness he had not heard directed at him in ages. Donald moved with the quiet precision of a man who had spent decades navigating noisy construction sites. He eased the front door open, grateful for the recent application of lubricant that silenced its usual creak. The giggle came again, louder this time, unmistakably coming from their bedroom upstairs. "Oh, Jason, you're terrible." Lucille's voice floated down, a mix of mock outrage and breathless laughter. Jason. The name lodged in Donald's mind like a shard of glass. He knew a Jason, Lucille's yoga instructor. Young, fit, and always wearing that easy smile Donald had found a bit too charming, too practiced. His eyes landed on Lucille's phone, carelessly left on the kitchen counter. The small voice of conscience that had guided him since his Boy Scout days put up a feeble protest, but it was quickly silenced. He picked up the phone, relieved to find it unlocked. What he saw made his vision blur. Months of flirtatious text messages, each one more intimate than the last. Photos etched themselves into his memory, provocative images of Lucille and poses she had never shared with him. Credit card statements revealed lavish dinners and hotel bookings on nights she had claimed to be working late. Donald's legal training kicked in, overriding the raw urge to storm upstairs and confront them. He needed evidence, clear, admissible proof. With practiced efficiency, he connected the phone to his laptop and began transferring the data to a secure cloud drive. As he worked, Donald's mind raced through the past few months. The late nights at the gallery, her sudden obsession with yoga, the way Lucille's eyes would dart away when he asked about her day. It all fit now, a puzzle of betrayal finally assembled. He finished the data transfer just as he heard footsteps on the stairs. Quickly, he placed the phone back on the counter and moved to the living room, feigning nonchalance as he rifled through his work bag. Lucille breezed in, her cheeks flushed, hair tousled slightly. "Donald, you're home early. Is everything all right at the site?" He looked at her, the woman he had shared his life with for over 2 decades, and felt a chill settle in his chest. "Equipment malfunction," he said, his voice steady. "Nothing we cannot handle." Lucille nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "I'm glad you're home. I was just about to start dinner. Any requests?" Donald shook his head, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "Whatever you feel like making is fine. I have some work to catch up on." As Lucille turned toward the kitchen, Donald retreated to his home office. He sat heavily in his chair, the weight of what he had discovered pressing down on him. He knew what he had to do next, but the thought filled him with a cold, hard anger he had never experienced before. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Outwardly, life continued as usual. Donald went to work, came home, and shared meals with Lucille. But beneath the surface, a storm was quietly building. One afternoon, Donald sat in a nondescript cafe, his fingers drumming anxiously on the table. Across from him sat Orlando Campbell, a man whose career thrived on discretion. "Mr. Gill," Orlando began, his voice low and deliberate. "I have compiled the information you requested." He slid a manila envelope across the table. Donald's hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. "And you are certain about all of this?" Orlando nodded gravely. "Every detail has been documented and verified. Photographs, timestamps, locations, it is all there." With a deep breath, Donald opened the envelope. The contents confirmed his worst fears, photographic evidence of Lucille and Jason together at various locations. Hotels, restaurants, even a secluded park bench. Each image struck him like a dagger. "There is more," Orlando continued. "I did some research on this Jason fellow. He has a pattern, a history of affairs with married women from his yoga classes. At least 3 confirmed over the past 2 years. Donald's jaw clenched. "And Lucille?" "Her work." Orlando's expression turned grim. "She has been skipping work to meet with him, Mr. Gill. It is beginning to jeopardize her position at the art gallery." Donald nodded slowly, cold determination settling in his chest. "Thank you, Orlando. You have been thorough." As he left the cafe, Donald's thoughts raced. He needed legal advice, and he knew exactly whom to call. Kenneth Noble's office was a sanctuary of dark wood and soft leather, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside Donald. His longtime friend and attorney listened intently as Donald laid everything out, spreading Orlando's evidence across the polished desk. "Jesus, Don," Kenneth muttered, leaning back in his chair. "I am so sorry. Are you absolutely sure about this? No chance of reconciliation." Donald let out a hollow laugh. "Ken, you have seen the evidence. This was not a one-time mistake. It has been going on for months. And it is not just the affair. She has been lying about work, risking her job. I need to know what my options are." Kenneth nodded, his face serious. "All right, let us talk strategy. First, we need to protect your assets. Have you separated your finances yet?" "I have started," Donald replied. "I have been quietly moving funds into secure accounts. I just did not want to raise any suspicions by moving too much too quickly." "Smart move," Kenneth approved. "We will need to document everything: Lucille's spending, her absences from work, any neglect of household duties." "What about your daughter, Amber? How is she fitting into all of this?" Donald's expression darkened. "Lucille has been missing Amber's parent-teacher conferences, always claiming she had work obligations. I have been picking up the slack, but I am worried about how this is affecting her." Kenneth made a note. "That is important. It shows that Lucille's priorities are not with the family." "Now, let us talk about gathering admissible evidence." The intricacies of the law no longer felt abstract to Donald Gill. They were now tools in his hands, instruments of justice. A grim sense of purpose had settled over him. Yes, he had been betrayed, but he would be damned if Lucille walked away unscathed. The following days passed in a blur of covert financial maneuvers and meticulous evidence gathering. Donald felt like a man leading two lives, dutiful husband by night, wronged man strategizing revenge by day. By Friday evening, the air was heavy with anticipation. Donald had assembled a dossier: emails, photographs, text messages, financial records, all organized with surgical precision. Each piece was a quiet weapon, devastating in its simplicity. As he heard Lucille's key in the lock, he took a deep breath and steeled himself. Lucille bustled in, arms laden with groceries. "Hey, honey, I thought we could have a nice dinner tonight. I even picked up that wine you like." Donald watched her move about the kitchen, her domestic routine a stark contrast to the betrayal documented in the folder on his lap. "Sounds great," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Why don't we sit and talk while dinner cooks?" Lucille glanced at him. Something, worry, maybe guilt, flickered across her face before she smiled. "Of course. Everything okay?" They settled at the dining room table, the folder resting between them like a loaded weapon. Donald looked at her, really looked at her. For a fleeting moment, he saw the young woman he had once fallen in love with. Then, just as quickly, the image of her entangled with Jason flashed through his mind, and his resolve hardened. "Lucille," he said, his tone even, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. What exactly is your relationship with Jason?" The color drained from Lucille's face, but she quickly regained composure. "Jason? My yoga instructor? He's just a friend, Donald." "Why would you ask?" Donald nodded slowly, as if considering her response. Then, with deliberate calm, he opened the folder and began laying out the evidence piece by piece. "Just a friend?" he repeated flatly, sliding a photo across the table: Lucille and Jason kissing in a hotel lobby. "Is this how you greet all your friends?" Lucille's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, then closed, unable to form words. "Or maybe this is standard friendly behavior now," he continued coldly, placing a printout of text messages between them. Messages laced with intimacy and desire. "Tell me, Lucille, do all your friends know what color underwear you prefer?" I can explain," Lucille stammered, her composure beginning to crumble. "Can you?" Donald's voice was ice. "Can you explain the hotel charges on our credit card? The days you called in sick to work but were actually with him? The money you have been funneling to him?" Tears streamed down Lucille's face. It was a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. "It didn't mean anything," Donald laughed bitterly. "A momentary lapse? Lucille, this has gone on for months. You have lied to me, to our daughter, to your colleagues. You have spent our money and neglected your responsibilities. Tell me, what part of that sounds momentary to you?" Before Lucille could respond, a gasp came from the doorway. They both turned to see their daughter, Amber, standing there. Her expression was frozen in shock and confusion. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Amber's voice quavered. Donald inhaled deeply. Amber, I am sorry you had to find out this way, but your mother, do not you dare. Amber cut in, her shock rapidly morphing into fury. I already know about Mom's affair, and I cannot believe you are being so heartless. Donald felt like he had been struck. You knew? He asked, stunned. Amber's eyes flashed. Of course I knew. Mom's been happier these past few months than I have seen her in years. And now you're going to throw everything away over something as stupid as an affair. Amber, you do not understand. No, you do not understand, she snapped. People make mistakes, Dad. But if you leave us over this, if you cannot forgive Mom, then you are dead to me. The words hung in the air like shrapnel. Donald looked from his furious daughter to his sobbing wife. A chasm opened up beneath him. Without another word, he stood and left the room. He packed a bag in the bedroom, the same room where Lucille had betrayed him again and again. From downstairs, he could hear Amber's voice, defiant and raw. Do not worry, Mom. You will get over it. Your happiness matters too. Donald zipped the bag shut, a cold knot hardening in his chest. As he walked out of the house, leaving behind the wreckage of his family, one thought crystallized in his mind. This was not over. Not by a long shot. The hotel room was sterile and impersonal, a fitting backdrop for the coldness settling in Donald Gill's soul. He sat on the edge of the bed, his laptop open, the events of the last 48 hours replaying in an endless loop. The betrayal, the confrontation, Amber's cutting words, "You were dead to me," echoing like a curse. He rubbed his eyes, his body threatening collapse from exhaustion and emotional weight, but he could not afford to break. Not yet. Not now. His phone buzzed, startling him from his thoughts. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Gill?" A crisp, professional voice asked. "This is Margaret Chun from Global Infrastructure Solutions. I hope I'm not disturbing you this weekend." Donald straightened. His mind shifted gears. "Not at all, Miss Chun. What can I do for you? We have been following your work on the Richardson project. Very impressive. We have an international infrastructure initiative launching in Singapore, and we would like to discuss your potential involvement." Donald's pulse quickened. Singapore, halfway across the world. A chance to put distance between himself and the ruins of his personal life. "I'm very interested, Miss Chun. When would you like to speak?" As he jotted down details for a Monday morning video call, a plan began to take shape. This was not just an escape. This was an opportunity. An opportunity for what? The word came unbidden. Revenge. It should have shocked him. Donald Gill, the Boy Scout, the civil engineer with a moral compass, now contemplating vengeance. But it did not. Instead, it sent a dark thrill through him. He opened a new browser tab and began researching divorce laws in his state, Jason's background, Lucille's financial records. If he was going to do this, he would do it with precision. Hours passed. The room darkened as the sun dipped below the horizon. Donald barely noticed. His eyes were glued to the screen. Then, just past midnight, a forum post made him sit upright. A yoga student, complaining about an instructor named Jason. She mentioned inappropriate advances, gambling debts, and connections to local loan sharks. Donald's lips curled into a mirthless smile. This was it. Jason's Achilles heel. He leaned back, his mind racing. The Singapore project. Jason's addictions. Lucille's financial misconduct. The pieces were all there. He picked up his phone again and dialed a familiar number. "Kenneth, it's Donald. I know it's late, but I need your advice. How familiar are you with international contract law?" As he outlined his thoughts, a sense of purpose returned. This was not just about making Lucille and Jason suffer. It was about reclaiming control. About ensuring that they felt every ounce of the pain they had inflicted on him. By the time the sun rose, casting pale light across the sterile hotel room, Donald had the skeleton of a plan. He would accept the Singapore offer. He would use the distance and legal complications to his advantage. And he would make certain, absolutely certain, that both Lucille and Jason learned the true meaning of consequences. Donald stood and stretched, his muscles stiff. He walked to the window. The city was stirring below, unaware of the storm brewing in room 412. He pressed his palm to the cold glass, his reflection staring back with unflinching resolve. "Be prepared," he muttered, a twisted echo of his Boy Scout oath. Oh, he would be prepared, and they would never see it coming. Messages were sent, targeted and precise. Not to all of Jason's yoga clients, of course, just the married women. Just enough to ignite whispers, to plant the seeds of suspicion. Did you know your instructor has a history of pursuing married students? Are you aware of Jason McKenna's gambling debts? Send, send, send. Donald leaned back in his chair, imagining the digital grenades he had just lobbed into Jason's world. Rumors would spread. Clients would leave. Financial pressure would begin to mount, and that was just the beginning. He picked up a burner phone, purchased in cash, completely untraceable, and dialed a number he had obtained through less than legal means. Yeah, a gruff voice answered. Is this Big Mike? Donald asked calmly. Who's asking? Someone who thinks you might want to know about a new income stream involving Jason McKenna. I hear he owes you quite a bit. There was a pause. I'm listening. Donald smiled. The loan sharks would apply their own brand of pressure now. Jason would find himself squeezed from all sides. With that task complete, Donald turned his attention to the shared investment portfolio he once managed with Lucille. A few calculated trades could make it appear as if Lucille's decisions had led to significant financial losses. It would not be enough to bankrupt them. He was not about to sabotage his own future, but it would certainly add more stress to her already crumbling foundation. As he executed the trades, his thoughts drifted to Amber. Her betrayal still stung. Her words echoed relentlessly. But Donald could never bring himself to target his daughter. Instead, he quietly secured her college fund in a separate, protected account. Let Lucille and Jason's future unravel, not Amber's. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and video conferences. Donald played his role perfectly, the brilliant, focused engineer immersed in Singapore's massive infrastructure project. But underneath that calm exterior, his mind was always turning, calculating, refining the next step. That night, he made one final move. He reached out to contacts in the art world, people he had met over the years through Lucille's gallery work. A comment here, a subtle insinuation there, just enough to raise quiet doubts about her professionalism, her ethics. Nothing direct, nothing provable, just whispers. Exhausted but satisfied, Donald poured himself a glass of whiskey and returned to the window, gazing out over the city skyline. In the glass, he saw a reflection of someone he barely recognized. A man colder, sharper, more dangerous. He raised his glass in a bitter toast. To the path you chose, he murmured and drank deeply. 2 months into his carefully crafted plan, Donald stood once more on the familiar doorstep of the home he had once shared with his wife and daughter. The Singaporean sun had darkened his skin. The weeks of quiet vengeance had hardened his soul. He rang the doorbell. Lucille answered, surprise flashing across her tired face. Donald. I did not know you were back in town. Donald offered a smile that never touched his eyes. Surprise, he said evenly. May I come in? I thought we could talk. Lucille hesitated, then stepped aside. The house had changed subtly. A new throw pillow on the couch. A different scent in the air. Small things, but they spoke volumes. Life had continued in his absence. But it was Lucille herself that truly surprised him. The confident, carefree woman he had left behind was gone. She looked distracted, drawn. Dark circles underscored her eyes. A furrow lived permanently between her brows. They sat down in the living room. Silence stretched between them, awkward and fragile. How's the project in Singapore? Lucille asked, her voice polite but strained. Donald launched into a technical explanation of the engineering work, watching her eyes glaze over. Halfway through a sentence, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and paled. Hastily, she silenced it. Everything all right? Donald asked, feigning concern. Lucille nodded far too quickly. Yes, just work stuff. You know how it is. But Donald did know. He knew Jason's yoga studio was bleeding clients. He knew the rumors were spreading like wildfire. And he knew the loan sharks were circling, growing louder, more threatening. Speaking of work, Donald said, casually, how are things at the gallery? Lucille's composure cracked. It's been challenging. Some issues with a few exhibitions. Nothing major. Donald nodded with false sympathy. His smear campaign was working. I am sorry to hear that, he said gently. If you're having any financial trouble, I'd be happy to help. We could go over the accounts together, see where things stand. Lucille's eyes darted away. That's very kind of you, Donald, but I think it's just a temporary setback. Still, he pressed on, relentless in his feigned helpfulness. Even so, it might be a good idea to meet with a financial advisor, just to be safe. I know a great one. Let me set up an appointment. Cornered by his apparent generosity, Lucille nodded, unable to protest without drawing suspicion. Right on cue, the front door opened. Amber walked in and froze when she saw him. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Donald stood and opened his arms. "Hey, sweetheart. I'm back in town for a bit. Thought I'd stop by." Amber allowed a brief, stiff hug. "How long are you staying?" "Not sure yet," Donald replied. "Depends on how things go." He turned back to Lucille. "I'll set up that appointment. Maybe Amber should join us too. Always good to start learning about finances early." Amber's brow furrowed. "Financial advisor? What's going on?" Lucille jumped in. "It's nothing, honey. Just some routine financial planning." But Donald saw it. The seed of doubt planted in Amber's mind. Let her wonder. Let her worry. As he left the house that evening, Donald felt a grim satisfaction. The pressure was rising. The cracks in Lucille's carefully constructed world were beginning to show, and he was far from finished. The following weeks passed with deliberate precision. The meeting with the financial advisor, secretly arranged through Kenneth, laid bare a grim outlook. Donald watched as Lucille and Amber listened, their anxiety growing. Each visit under the guise of reconciliation gave him new opportunities. A discarded receipt here, an overheard phone call there. Every detail was added to his ironclad divorce strategy. One evening, just as he was preparing to leave after another strained family dinner, he heard Amber confronting her mother in the kitchen. "Mom, what's really going on? Are we in trouble? Is this because of Jason?" Donald froze at the front door, listening. "It's complicated, sweetie," Lucille's voice cracked. "But I promise, I'm handling it." "Are you?" Amber's voice wavered. "Because it doesn't look like you're handling anything." "Dad's back. We're meeting with advisors. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. What aren't you telling me?" Donald slipped out before he could hear the rest. A cold smile touched his lips. The doubt was there. The pressure was building. And soon, very soon, it would all come crashing down. But all Donald Gill felt was satisfaction. They had destroyed his life, shattered his trust, and broken his family. Now, they would reap what they had sown. The unforgiving path of revenge stretched out before him, and Donald was committed to seeing it through to the bitter end. Donald stood in the kitchen of what had once been his family home, a manila envelope clutched tightly in his hand. The weight of its contents, divorce papers, meticulously prepared by Kenneth, felt heavier than it should. He glanced at his watch. Lucille would be home soon. As if on cue, he heard the jangle of keys in the lock. Donald straightened, his face a mask of calm determination. The time for pretense was over. Lucille bustled in, arms full of groceries. She stopped short at the sight of Donald, her eyes darting nervously to the envelope in his hand. "Don, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tentative. He didn't answer immediately, instead watching as she set down the bags, her movements betraying her unease. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and devoid of emotion. "Sit down, Lucille. We need to talk." She complied, sinking into a kitchen chair, her face pale. Donald remained standing, towering over her. "I think you know what this is," he said, placing the envelope on the table between them. Lucille's hand trembled as she reached for it. "Divorce papers?" She whispered, not a question, but a defeated statement. Donald nodded, his voice cold. "Along with a comprehensive record of your affair and financial misdeeds, every text, every hotel receipt, every penny you siphoned from our accounts to fund Jason's gambling habit." The color drained from Lucille's face. "How did you? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Donald's voice was ice. "I'm a civil engineer, Lucille. I build things for a living. Did you really think I couldn't deconstruct your web of lies?" Tears welled up in Lucille's eyes. "Donald, please. I thought we were working on our marriage. We can fix this." For a moment, Donald felt a flicker of the love he once had for this woman, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of her betrayal and Amber's cruel words. "There's nothing to work through, Lucille. Your actions and Amber's response have shown me the truth about our family. This marriage is over." As if summoned by her name, Amber chose that moment to walk into the kitchen. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" she asked. Donald turned to his daughter, his expression hardening. "Your mother and I are getting a divorce. I'm sure this comes as no surprise to you, given your previous insight into the situation." Amber's face flushed with anger. "You can't be serious." "Mom made a mistake, Dad. People deserve second chances." Donald's laugh was harsh. "Let me show you what your mother's mistake has cost us." He pulled out a series of financial documents from the envelope and spread them across the table. "Your mother has been funneling money to Jason for months. Money from our joint account. Money earmarked for your education. Amber's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. Mom, is this true? Lucille's sobs were answer enough. Amber stumbled back, her righteous anger deflating as the reality of the situation sank in. Donald watched the doubt creep into his daughter's eyes, feeling satisfaction. I'll be moving out. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the division of assets and custody arrangements. As he turned to leave, Lucille's voice, small and broken, stopped him. Donald, please. I love you. We can fix this. He paused at the doorway but didn't turn back. Love? You don't even know the meaning of the word. With that, he walked out, leaving behind the wreckage of his family. As he got into his car, he could hear Amber's raised voice through the open kitchen window. How could you, Mom? How could you do this to us? Donald allowed himself a small, cold smile as he drove away. The unraveling had begun. Donald nodded, accepting the apology with grace. I understand you were doing your job, Miss Chun. I'm just glad we were able to uncover the truth. The CEO, a gruff man named Harrison Wells, cleared his throat. Donald, I won't mince words. You've not only cleared your name, but uncovered a plot that could have cost this company millions. Your integrity and dedication. Well, they're exactly what we need in a leader. Donald's eyebrows rose. Sir, we'll be announcing a restructuring next week. I'd like you to consider taking on a more senior role. VP of International Projects, perhaps? As the meeting adjourned, Donald felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His professional reputation wasn't just intact, it had been enhanced. The future, which had seemed so uncertain just days ago, now held new promise. But there was still one more battle to fight, the divorce proceedings. After months of dragging on, the divorce was brought to a swift conclusion in light of the new developments. Lucille, her leverage evaporated with the dismissal of the bribery allegations, had little left to negotiate. In the end, she received minimal alimony, with her infidelity and financial misconduct working against her. The judge was particularly unimpressed by her attempts to use the false bribery accusations to gain an advantage. As they left the courthouse for the last time, Donald saw Jason waiting by a beat-up car in the parking lot. The once confident yoga instructor now looked haggard, the strain of the past months evident in his posture. Lucille paused, looking between Donald and Jason, indecision clear on her face. Donald merely nodded to her and walked away. He had no more words for either of them. Later that evening, as Donald packed up the last of his things from the family home, Amber appeared in the doorway of his old office. Dad. Her voice was small and hesitant. Can we talk? Donald turned, regarding his daughter coolly. What is it, Amber? She stepped into the room, wringing her hands. I'm sorry for everything. For not believing you, for defending Mom. I was wrong. For a moment, Donald felt a flicker of his old affection for his daughter, but the memory of her cruel words, "You're dead to me," still stung. I appreciate your apology, Amber, he said quietly, but it doesn't change what happened. Amber's eyes filled with tears. I know. I miss you, Dad. Can't we try to fix this? Donald sighed, feeling suddenly very tired. Some things, once broken, can't be easily fixed. I'll always be your father, Amber, but our relationship, it needs time. He turned back to his packing, effectively ending the conversation. He heard Amber's quiet sobs as she left the room, but he hardened his heart against them. Trust, once shattered, was not easily rebuilt. The next day, Donald moved into his new home, a sleek, modern apartment that bore no resemblance to the suburban house he'd shared with Lucille. As he stood on the balcony, looking out over the city, he felt a sense of possibility he hadn't experienced in years. The path of revenge had been long and bitter. He had lost his marriage, strained his relationship with his daughter, and nearly lost his career. But he had also rediscovered his strength, his resilience, and his self-respect. Donald Gill raised a glass to the setting sun, a solitary toast to new beginnings. The unforgiving path had led him here, to this moment of hard-won peace. Whatever came next, he would face it on his own terms. 6 years passed, each day putting more distance between Donald and the turmoil of his past. His career flourished, the promotion to VP of International Projects leading to even greater opportunities. He traveled the world, leaving his mark on skylines from Dubai to Shanghai. But success, he found, was a poor substitute for family. The holidays were the hardest. His apartment felt cavernous and empty without the warmth of loved ones. It was on a crisp autumn evening, as Donald was reviewing plans for a new project in Brazil, that the doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, he considered ignoring it. But something, intuition, perhaps, or just simple curiosity, propelled him to the door. He opened it to find Amber standing there, looking both familiar and strange. At 25, she was no longer the defiant teenager he remembered, but a young woman with a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. "Dad," she said, her voice catching slightly. I need your help." Donald's hand tightened on the doorframe, his expression carefully neutral. "What kind of help, Amber?" She took a deep breath. "I want to go to grad school, but I can't afford it. I was hoping maybe you could help with the tuition." For a long moment, Donald said nothing. He simply looked at his daughter, memories of betrayal warring with the lingering embers of paternal love. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Wait here." He retreated into his apartment, leaving Amber shifting nervously in the hallway. When he returned, he was holding a sealed envelope. "I think," Donald said slowly, "that you should ask your real father for the money." Amber's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about? You are my real father." Donald held out the envelope. "Open it." With trembling hands, Amber tore open the envelope and pulled out the contents. Her eyes widened as she scanned the document. This can't be right," she whispered, her face pale. "I had suspicions for years," Donald said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your mother's affair with Jason started earlier than I initially thought. I got the test done after the divorce, but I never found the right moment to tell you. Or perhaps I just didn't want to hurt you further." Amber looked up from the paper, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please. This doesn't change anything. You raised me. You're my father in every way that matters." Donald shook his head slowly. "No, Amber. This changes everything. It explains why you were so quick to defend your mother. Why you turned on me so easily. Blood will out, as they say." "Dad, no, please." Amber reached out, but Donald was already stepping back, his hand on the door. "You're nothing to me," he said, the words falling like hammer blows. "Go ask Jason for the money. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to know he has a daughter." With that, Donald closed the door, shutting out Amber's anguished cries. He leaned against it, feeling a complex mix of emotions, vindication, sorrow, and a grim sense of finality. His revenge was complete. He had lost both his unfaithful wife and the daughter who had betrayed him. But in that loss, he found a strange sort of freedom. The last ties to his old life were severed. Whatever came next, it would be entirely on his terms. Donald walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawled before him. The unforgiving path had led him here, to this moment of stark, solitary triumph. He had survived. He had prevailed. And in the end, that would have to be enough.